time around people, not so many people have given tests. Very few people have given test. Hardly 60 people. क्या हो गया बाकी 40 को? What happened to the rest 40 over there in test 1? Why they did not write the paper? And I told you this is the most important paper because this paper was on thinkers. Of course, another paper will be there, okay, very soon. Again, that will be purely on thinkers. Friendship Day celebrate कर रहे होंगे सर? यार फ्रेंडशिप डे सेलिब्रेट करने की उम्र तो नहीं है अब तो थोड़ा कुछ बड़ा करना चाहिए लाइफ में, तो वी वुड गेट द चेक्ड कॉपीज अर्ली. लैक ऑफ रिवीजन रहा होगा, जो भी रहा होगा. देखो पेपर आ जाना चाहिए था, मेरे पास आया नहीं. अब रीजन पता नहीं है, मुझे इतना पता है पेपर नहीं आया, आना चाहिए था. रीजन जो भी हो. So let me first give you one question and then we'll begin with our new topic. And also I'll make one very important announcement after this question. Okay. So first let us do one question. Let's see how you approach this question. Very simple. Let me give you latest question only, na. Let us try to solve latest question. Okay, 2020. Let's see how you approach it. State the reasons for the various religious beliefs in pre-modern societies. This was 20 mark question. No, sorry. This was year 2020 and 10 mark question. 10 marks. Year 2020. क्वेश्चन ढंग से पढ़ना. इन प्री मॉडर्न सोसाइटीज बोला है, इन प्री मॉडर्न सोसाइटीज. ओके. Think of the points that are coming in your head and also then state the reasons for those points. Okay, think of all those religious beliefs coming in your head. Let us see how you approach this question. So let us begin with answer to this question. And then I'll discuss one important point with you. First, the question is state the reasons for the various religious beliefs in pre-modern societies. This is very important. In pre-modern. Okay. And the context is pre-modern. The demand is reasons for what? Religious beliefs. So first of all, we need to understand, because this is the fulcrum, central point. Religious beliefs is the central point of the question in pre-modern society. So first we need to understand what were the religious beliefs in pre-modern society. Okay. So let me first simply write down religious beliefs in pre-modern societies. What were those? See, we have read Durkheim. Durkheim talks about totemism. Audible or not? Uh, So Durkheim talks about totemism. Durkheim conducted his study on totemism, specifically taking into consideration tribal society, Arunta tribe, which is pre-modern society. Simple. Second, we have also read Malinowski, Robbery Enders. Okay, Malinowski, Robbery Enders. So they also had religion. Okay, Robbery Ender Island, Malinowski. Third, we have read E.B. Tyler, who talks about animism. We have also read, not to a very great extent, but we have at least, you guys have at least knowledge about one concept that I talked about, not given explicitly in our syllabus, but still I talked about it. That was naturism. Max Muller. Okay. So, if you write these four, more than enough in a 10-mark question. कुछ लोग एक या दो लिखते हैं, अगर हम ये चारों लिख दें 10 marks assured. Simply we have to discuss the religious beliefs now. Totemism is what? Belief in what? Belief in what collectivity consider as sacred. So belief in sacred, that is what the principle of totemism is. Belief in sacred, collective belief. What was the belief of the people amongst the Trobriander in relation to the religion? They use religion and they believe their religiosity was the result of uncertainty. So whenever the times were uncertain, they became religious. When the times were certain, they used science. So their religious beliefs were coming out as a result of uncertainty. Beliefs as a result of uncertainty. Animism, belief in spirit. Spirit in both animate and inanimate. Naturism, belief in natural forces. Natural forces. Why would you believe in natural force like mountain? Why would you attribute mountain as a god? Why would you attribute river as a god or as a natural force in itself? Okay. Why would you attribute fire as god, earth as god? So like for example, even in Indus Valley civilization, we had the conception of earth goddess. During Indus Valley civilization, we had the conception of earth goddess. Okay. Fire god Agni Dev we had. Why do we believe in these natural forces? Because of the crisis they bring to our lives. See, imagine, think about a natural force like rainfall. Rainfall is rainfall. It is very beautiful. You would want to have a cup of tea, or you would want to listen to a ghazal. Okay, but this rainfall can also take an extreme form and can also assume a form of flood, which happened in Himachal. Flood. When you see that nature takes extreme forms, calamitic forms, okay, and brings crisis to the lives of ordinary people, they start becoming religious. Okay, that's how they start worshipping these natural forces, so that these natural forces do not harm them. River is river, it can take the shape of flood. Fire is fire, it can take the shape of forest fire. So when these elements take extreme form, now it is devastating for humanity. And that is why people start worshipping them, so that these natural elements do not lose their temper, because the consequences will be borne by the humanity. And therefore, Max Muller believed this is why people become religious in terms of worship of nature, so that nature do not harm them. This is what naturism is. Okay, this is why people become religious in terms of natural forces. Animism, belief in spirit, you know this. Totemism, you know. First, routinization of charisma. You routinization of charisma is not a religious belief. Ranshu, routinization of charisma is not a religious belief. Reasons for religious beliefs in pre-modern society. This is what is being talked about. Okay, so if you think routinization of charisma is, if you are simply attributing routinization from one leader to another leader, that is okay. Okay, but you know, when you talk about religious beliefs specifically, then in that case, so these are the beliefs that should come in and the reasons for them. Routinization of charisma also can be brought in, but not, what should I say? It is not the concrete answer. We would have to interlink to make an impression that this is how we are addressing the answer. James Fraser, magic. Magic is not religion. See, James Fraser talks about magic, religion, and science. These are the forms of knowledge. So first we were magic related. First we had beliefs related to magic. So everything used to get healed with the help of magic. Then we became religious, and then finally scientific. Okay. So, but when it comes, we do not have to think only about reasons. We also have to think about religious belief, because when you talk about religious belief, na, reasons automatically come in. When I'm talking about belief in sacred, reasons come in. When I talk about beliefs as a result of uncertainty, again reason is coming there. Belief in spirit. Acha, why? Tell me, in animism, why did we have belief in spirit? Because man was not able to explain death and dream. These were the intellectual needs of the man to explain these phenomena. Since he was not able to explain these phenomena, that is why he became religious and started worshipping spirits, believed in spirits, started believing in spirits. Okay, so reason is clear, belief is clear. In naturism, also, belief is clear, worship of nature, reasons also, I told you, nature can have devastating consequences, that is why. So now, like that. In fact, there are two more religions. which are something that we do not study as a student of sociology. They are exclusively studied by anthropologists. For example, there is one religion known as animatism. Okay. And then there is Manaism as well. Mana is something that Durkheim has also studied on. Mana. Mana is like a magical power. Okay, he has also studied on those things. But Manaism as a specific religion and animatism as specific religion is studied by anthropologists. So let us now begin with let us now begin. And you can also talk about how these religions are still very much present even in the modern societies. Totemism, although the question is about pre-modern, but you can also argue in the end that these religions, although are theoretically characterized as religions of pre-modern society, but they are very much present even in the modern societies. Totemism, you can give example. Animism, you can give example. Okay. Now, the next topic, politics and society. Yes. So, what we are planning is, since many people have requested us that since prelims is also coming on 10th of October, we have prelims also. Many students are appearing this year. So, we had a discussion over how to have a balance between optional classes that is going on and the prelims that will be coming up. Okay. So what we have decided is that after paper 1, which will be over within 2 more weeks, hardly 2 more weeks now, okay, for paper 1, and immediately after paper 1 we will give you some days off so that you can prepare for prelims. Okay. So we will give you uh, holidays two times. One after immediately after prelims. Oh, sorry, immediately after this paper one completion, and secondly, we will also give you some days off before prelims as well. Okay, for example, 10th October is prelims, so we will give you off for 1 more week or maybe 10 days, and we will continue the remaining classes after 10th of October. Okay, and we will finish the syllabus by 20th October in that case. Okay, so that you can prepare for your prelims as well and have a proper balance between means and other things, because there are many things that students are studying. They are also studying uh, GS, taking coaching from somewhere else, and that becomes very difficult for them to manage. So we understand those things. So we have decided to give you two times uh, off. One is after paper one, and second is right before prelims. Okay, but the maximum that we will be extending the course is hardly 20th October. Beyond that, we would not be able to extend. Okay, so 20th October would then be. So we would expect you to then uh, start attending the classes after prelims, immediately after prelims. Okay, and not start calculating your score, because that would not matter. स्कोर के चेक करना वो सब मैटर नहीं करता है. हाँ, ठीक है. उस दिन आपको पता चल जाता है. बात सीधी सी है. Same day you will get to know whether you are in or out. Same day. Same day. Okay. And whether you are in or out does not matter. The show must go on. And trust me, the only thing that I advise everyone, is that you cannot without appearing in mains, you cannot judge yourself. The minimum thing that you should be doing is to appear in mains. If there is someone who could not clear prelims or who has not been able to clear prelims, just be patient. Okay, be patient. Try to clear prelims once, appear in mains, then you would get to know. Then you would be in a better position to evaluate yourself. You would not be in a better position to evaluate yourself if you're struggling with prelims only. Okay, prelims is not a criteria to judge for yourself whether you are capable enough for this or not. Mains, at least mains. Okay, and even in mains you would get to know that this is one area that I need to work on. The rest of the things are very much I'm comfortable with, but this is one area that I need to work on. So in mains now what happens, you easily get to know, boundaries get very clear in mains. In prelims boundary do not get clear. Why? Because just you just saw a question paper having 100 questions, your set was D or C, you had C set or D set, and unfortunately in your set the first question was that of ancient history. Okay, unfortunately, or art and culture, or maybe even science and tech, or maybe even environmental sciences, specifically of biotechnology, that is something related to gene pool or genetic mutation. The things that you know are very much, you know, liked by UPSC and hated by you. Unfortunately, the very first page was a question on these things. Even if you are very comfortable with economy, you may end up circling right wrong option in the economy question just because you have gone through those questions that you do not like, that too on the very first page, since unfortunately you had set C or D. Okay, so that is why I generally do not regard prelims as the right kind of method for you to evaluate yourself. Unless you appear in mains, you would not be able to get a clarity. Okay, prelims is more about luck. Prelims is more about luck. Why? Because you see, we know one thing, that we have to get 100 plus. This is the only thing that we know. We have to get 100 plus. Okay, but we also know that to get 100 plus we need to have 50 questions, right? And we know this, that we do not attempt only 50 questions because we do not know whether we are right or not, and therefore we attempt more questions. Okay, just to keep ourselves in a safer position, so that even if some of the questions go wrong, the other questions may counterbalance it and make us help uh, clear this prelim stage. So therefore it is inevitable on the part of every student, inevitable on the part of every student to try questions, what we also call as fluke, जिसे तुक्का बोलते हैं, कि let us try more, because we know 50 questions alone would not help us, so we need to attempt more. Some trials are successful and some trials are unsuccessful or unluckily unsuccessful. Okay, so those lucky ones, they clear prelims. Okay, and the unlucky ones attempt next year. So prelims is more like a gambling, it's more like a lottery. Okay, but mains is the real one. Will we be in hurry to complete syllabus after 2 short vacation, or can it hamper 22 just simply asking sir thank you? नहीं 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 ऐसा कुछ नहीं होएगा. There will be no hurry. जल्दबाजी बिल्कुल नहीं. So let us begin with politics and society. Remember one thing. When you read this word, politics, few things come to our mind. Started raining. एकदम सही. So few things come to our mind: parliament, state legislature, panchayati raj institutions, democracy, theocracy, authoritarianism, president, prime minister. These are the things that come to our mind when we see the word politics. But remember, politics is just one part of the larger society. Politics cannot happen without the context of society. And remember how a political scientist looks at the political system and how a sociologist looks at the political system are very different. Why? See, I'll tell you one difference between the approaches of these two people. Okay. For a political scientist, democracies are of multiple types. Okay. For a political scientist, democracies are of multiple types. Some are presidential form, some are prime ministerial form, some are semi-presidential form. This is how they classify democracies. But sociologists, they question the classification itself. And they say we should have different and more other criteria to classify democracy, because when you are classifying democracy purely on the basis of form of governance, you are actually depriving yourself of the larger picture. Democracy, for example, to scholars like Andre Bete, who is also there in your paper too, okay. To quote him, Andre Bete, he believes that democracy should be evaluated not on the basis of form of governance, whether it is prime minister or presidential. Democracy should be evaluated on the basis of form of opposition. The kind of opposition that we have in those nation states should be the criteria to evaluate the health of democracy. If the opposition is very weak, then democracy is not democracy. Democracy is autocratic. Understanding or not? समझे कि नहीं मैं क्या बोल रहा हूं? If opposition is very weak, then it is not democracy, it is majoritarianism. Thriving under the blanket of democracy. डेमोक्रेसी एक चादर बन जाता है सिर्फ जिसके अंदर डिक्टेटर्स पैदा हो रहे हैं, which is a fact. So what is the criteria? How you define democracy is very important, and therefore democracy is not democracy. When you think of democracy only as political system, in the sense you are classifying democracy only on the basis of ruling parties, even in political sense, you are only portraying half picture. The rest half is completely absent, which is equally, in fact, more important. Ambedkar also believed that the real test of democracy lies in the functioning of opposition. This is the criteria through which you can evaluate democracy. And there are many organizations who evaluate democracy. For example, of lately there was so much of brouhaha over that health of democracy conducted through surveys carried out by organizations like Economist Intelligence Unit, articulating few democracies as flawed democracies. So what is the criteria? That is important. How you measure democracy. Secondly, how we are different from political scientists. Political scientists would look only at the surface, only at the surface. You would not see, and you would see it very strange. You know, I know, everyone knows that in India, politics is not politics in isolation to other domains of life. Religion plays a very huge role in politics. Political scientists do not study it. Political scientists, in the syllabus of political science, you would not have the role of religion in the politics, on the politics. But religion plays huge role. Although they would talk about secularism, but they would not talk about the role of religion, because of which we had to develop secularism. So they are not studying, despite being political scientists, they do not study holistically. And on the other hand, sociologists, they study everything. They may not go into the deeper details, but they would force other social scientists to scrutinize themselves and to go into deeper details, because sociology exposes us to serendipities. It lets people believe that these are the things that you did not notice and you should be noticing. So, sociology is one discipline that touches upon every aspect of life and reveals something that was hidden, not discussed by any other social scientist. As a student of sociology, you would realize that politics is not operating only at the political level, in the sense it is not only operating at the so-called legislature, executive or judicial level. Politics happen even in the families. पॉलिटिक्स हम उसको बोलते हैं, घर पे हम आपस में बात नहीं करते, क्या मम्मी पॉलिटिक्स कर रहे हो यार आप. This is how we talk about members of family. You know, in family also we have disputes over property, over one or the other thing, and there also you see politics only. But when we read politics, when we come across this word politics, unfortunately only president, prime minister comes in our mind, but that is not how it should be. Politics is the blood of society, blood. If you remember, I told you about human body and society analogy. I told you about all the organs in the human body: heart, liver, kidney, brain. We also have similar organs in societies. But other than organs in our body, there is one very important fluid, fluid which runs across the body. The name of that fluid is blood. And analogous to that blood in society is the concept we call as power. Power runs across the society just like blood flows across the capillaries in human body. And when you deal with power, you cannot limit yourself to administrative power or political power, because power is everywhere. You just need a lens to see the flow of power. So, first topic, as we know, is sociological theories of power. Sociological theories of power. What are the theories that we are going to read? Again, very simple, and these are the theories that you are going to use. Again, same template, the same template that I use for religion. First, we'll go into details of theories and we use those theories to explain other things. Okay. Theories of power. First, Marxist theory of power. Not Marxist, let us first begin with functional theory. Functional theory of power. Second, Marxist theory of power. Third, Weberian theory. Of power. Fourth, pluralist theory of power. Fifth, elite theory of power. Sixth, postmodern theory. In fact, not postmodern, feminist theory. Feminist theory of power. And seventh, postmodern theory. Right? Is it audible? Is it audible to you guys? बीच में क्योंकि साइन आउट हो गया था. हाँ ठीक है ठीक. Functional theory of power, Marxist theory of power, Weberian theory, pluralist theory, elite theory, feminist theory, postmodern theory. These are the theories that we are going to read. Okay. So first I'll begin with functional theory of power. Functional theory of power. Okay. So first heading should be functional theory of power. So first we need to understand why do we read theories of power? Okay. Because theories of power help us to locate power. These are the theories which actually explains the flow of power. Flow of power. Okay. These are like different instruments through which you can test where the blood is flowing right now. I mean, where is the blood concentrated? For example, if I ask you a simple question, is our blood, human blood, concentrated at one place or is it dispersed all throughout the body? It flows throughout the body, right? It flows throughout the body, right? But then we also have some deficiencies, problems which need to be diagnosed, and then we get to know that we lack RBC count or WBC count, something like that. Platelets count drop ho gaya hai, or there is not so much of blood, there is not so much of flow of the blood in that part. Okay, that is why the organ is not functioning anymore, something like that. These are the kind of problems that we have in human body. Similarly, in society, at times the flow of power is no longer diffused, rather it is concentrated at one place. Okay. And at times power flows throughout the society. But in what times power flows throughout society, in what times power is concentrated, to understand those things, we have to have theoretical knowledge. Okay. So first, I will talk about functional theory of power, and that is given by Talcott Parsons. Okay, remember, just because it is functional does not mean that you write about Durkheim. Here, it is specifically Talcott Parsons. Okay, so what would Talcott Parsons say on power? What would Talcott Parsons say on power? See, one thing is very much clear. Talcott Parson is one person who looks at society as a composite being consisting of four different subsystems or action systems, whatever you may call it. Each action system or subsystem catering to a specific need, thereby the need of society as a whole is addressed and system is maintained. If I ask Talcott Parson, then where is power and what is power? So he would simply say, power is nothing but a resource that would be utilized to help the society meet its demands. Simple. Power is a resource. Write down. According to Talcott Parsons, power is a resource that helps the society, that helps the society address its needs. That helps the society address its needs. ओके, ठीक है. अब बात करते हैं कि कैसे होता है, क्या होता है. See, Talcott Parson is one person who believes, you know, just like we have accounts, bank accounts, where we deposit our money. When you deposit your money in the bank account, what happens? You get interest. You get interest on that money. Therefore, if you are depositing money in account, it is your own benefit. Your money is safe. Moreover, you are getting interest also. Free ka paisa. Similarly, all the people in society deposit their power to one man. Just like we deposited our money in bank, we deposited our power in one man. कहां से आया ये कॉन्सेप्ट? हॉब्स. All of us give certain amount of our power to someone. Social contract का जो कॉन्सेप्ट है, क्योंकि you know Talcott Parson was heavily influenced by these people as well. So all of us have given certain amount of our power to a leader. When you deposit money in bank account, you get interest. But when you deposit your power on someone, your leader, again you get interest. Leader will be doing those things which you yourself with that power cannot do. Leader will develop roads, infrastructure, electric train, bullet train, okay, clean whole India, sanitation, arrange oxygen ventilators, which you yourself cannot do. That leader will be doing for you because you have deposited your power in that person. So you get interest, you get free education, you get free oxygen mask or oxygen ventilator, whatever you may call it. You get many things for free and you also get many things at subsidized price. That means when all of us are depositing our power on that leader, in that leader, who is benefiting? All of us are benefiting. Agreed or not? All of us are benefiting. And when all of us are benefiting, that means the system, the health of system is going to improve or deteriorate. The health of system is going to improve. Simple. So simple. Okay. So what did we learn? Power deposited in a leader. This generates interest. Interest in what form? Social and economic welfare. This is the interest that we get back when we deposit our power. We get so many policies catering to our needs. Okay, we get so many policies catering to our needs only because we deposited our power. Social economic welfare. And what will happen eventually? System benefits. System word is important. System benefits. System benefits. That means everybody wins in the war of power. Nobody loses. Everybody wins in the war of power. Okay. Nobody loses. If the leader, by chance, does not come up with policies catering to the needs of the people, or if the leader is not concerned about employment opportunities, not concerned about education, health of education, the power of system will decrease. The power of system will decrease. Power of system, remember this, will decrease, deteriorate. The health of society will deteriorate. Imagine if you have unemployment rate rising like anything and leader not doing anything to curb it. What will happen? We will have excessive unemployed people, which will turn into cheap labor and readily available to get exploited in the hands of someone else. Okay, in that case, leader should be responsible and accountable for these things, and he should develop policies which can keep a check on in rising unemployment rate. But if he does not do that, system will deteriorate. But when system deteriorates, everybody is at loss. It is not loss of one man or loss of one section. Everybody would be at loss. Everybody. Imagine if people are unemployed. Do you think corporate sector will thrive just because they are cheap labor now? Array, corporate sector does not thrive by cheap labor. It thrives by demand. And if people are unemployed, who will demand the market goods? Who will these people produce for? So, system is either healthy for everyone, unhealthy for everyone. So, either it is everybody's loss or everybody's win. सिंपल सी बात है. System benefits or सिस्टम लॉस, सिंपल सी बात है. It can be anything. Okay, that means everybody wins or everybody loses, and therefore power is variable sum. Therefore, power is, remember this phrase, variable sum. Power is variable sum. Okay, over. Functional theory is over. Let us understand Marxist theory of power. See, Marx, as you know, sir, how variable as power is still with leader? No, 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 no. System power, power of system. That is why I said use the word system. Power is used as a resource by the leader for the societal benefit, for the systemic benefit. And if power is not used by the leader as a resource for the systemic benefit or for the benefit of the system, the power of the system declines. Power is variable sum. Got it? Now, Marx's theory of power. According to Marx, power can never be variable sum. Power can never be variable sum. You know, Marx would say always that power does not cater to societal needs or systemic needs. Power caters to the needs of bourgeoisie. Power caters to capitalist class. Who use that power to exploit the working class. Therefore, to Marx, the notion of power is coming from economic base. The people who have control over economic base, they are the powerful. Because it is the economy which is driving the society. If you have control over economy, you have control over society. Simple. So therefore, according to Marx, it is the economic base which holds the power. Economic base is therefore function of power. Or economic base holds the resource called as power. And the people who are the owners of this economic base will have the power in society. Okay. What does it mean? It means the politics of society will be governed by capitalist class. It is not the politics governing capitalist class, it is capitalist governing politics. So politicians would be puppet in the hands of corporates because state is in the superstructure. The policies that politicians will come up with would be largely sponsored by corporates. So let me give you examples. Let us think about projects like bullet train, metro, or any other heavy infrastructure. Commonwealth Games that was conducted in Delhi. You know, if you look at these events through the functionalist perspective, you would see everybody benefited. Through Commonwealth Games, you know, India's image got changed. The makeover, Delhi got a new makeover. Metro lines got established. New means of transport and communications got facilitated only with the help of Commonwealth Games. But if you look at Commonwealth Games through the perspective of Marx, you may even come to believe that Commonwealth Games actually catered more to the interest of capitalist class. Capitalist class means what? The whole idea of metro, although we celebrate E. Sridharan as Metro Man of India, but the fact is, Marx would tell us that when you keep celebrating Metro Man, this celebration is hiding who made profits and what is being done with these profits. It was Japan. It was Japan which made profit, and some small scale corporates in India. The alliance of Japan and India, corporate alliance of Japan and India made profit. Okay. So the way of looking at reality is very different for all these different people. Okay. So remember what we have to understand when we are reading Marx. According to Marx, it is the capitalist class which holds power. Why they hold power? Because they are the owners of the means of production. Okay. And being owner, they control power. And therefore, the politicians will simply be subservient to the demands of corporates. And politicians will launch projects, rural electrification program, urban housing scheme, e-rupee, RUPI, which was launched today. All these initiatives that are launched by politicians, according to Marx, are catering to corporate needs. When India was demonetized, who benefited? ATM benefited, Airtel Bank benefited, these Paytm banks got benefited. Who did not get benefit? Masses, because they do not have smartphone. स्मार्टफोन ही नहीं है. डिमोनेटाइजेशन का फायदा किसको होएगा? जिसके पास स्मार्टफोन है. Demonetization actually created a new kind of consumers in society, which now do everything with the help of mobile phone and transact everything by asking that person, पेटीएम है तुम्हारे पास? नहीं है क्या? गरीब. पेटीएम अब तो इंपॉर्टेंट है. पेटीएम कॉमन सेंस बन गया. पेटीएम हमारे लिए मतलब पेटीएम अब कॉमन सेंस पता किस चीज का बन गया है? ऑनलाइन पेमेंट की जगह हम बोलते हैं पेटीएम कर लें. पेटीएम जबकि कंपनी का नाम है. ये डिस्कोर्स में आ गया, हमारे एवरीडे लाइफ में हमारे आ चुका है. ये जीत पेटीएम की है. ऐसे देखता है मार्क्स. दिस इज हाउ मार्क्स वुड लुक एट दिस रियलिटी. ओके. Every policy that government would come up with would be actually catering to corporates. Okay, and therefore remember one more thing. Power is not variable sum. Power is constant sum. Constant sum. Power is constant sum. Why constant sum? And what is the meaning of constant sum? Suppose I write like this, plus 2 minus 2. What is the result? 0. 0 is nothing but constant sum. Plus 2 minus 2. That means someone's gain is coming at the cost of someone's loss. The gain of capitalist is coming at the loss of working class. The more they gain, the more working class lose. Because profit is the result of exploitation. The more you gain profit, the more you are exploiting. And all the organs of society are catering to the needs of corporates. Understood? Therefore, power is constant sum. That means one group's gain is another group's loss. एक का गेन दूसरे का लॉस है. That means Marx does not believe in collective gain or collective loss. He says there is nothing like collective gain, collective loss. There is only one thing: corporate gain and corporate loss. Because economy is the base of society. And corporate gains, they never lose. And that is why I am crying every day and telling to the workers of the world to unite and to gain the power that they have used for centuries together to exploit you. Now is the time for all the workers to unite and overthrow the bourgeois, establish their power, which he called as dictatorship of the proletariat. This is how power is gained. Power is there in the economy, and power can be gained only by the control over economy. Understood? Okay. Now, next is Weberian theory of power. What will Weber say? First, we should define the way Weber has defined power. And to Weber, power is a probability, chance of a man or a number of men to exercise their will even against resistance of others. And remember, when you are exercising your will even against resistance of others, what does it mean? One's gain is automatically being equal to someone else's loss. You exercise power even against resistance of others. That means you are dominating over other against his wish. That means power is again constant sum even to Max Weber. Understood? Simple. Okay. And we know first what we do, we define power. Power is chance of man number of men to exercise their will even against resistance of others. This is how he defined power. Okay. And remember, this word is very important, called as chance. Actually, Weber should have highlighted this word, but he did not highlight because in those times there was no highlighter available in the markets. Okay. So he only used chance just like any other word. He should have at least used bold letters. Why I'm saying it again and again? Because the very reason for him to write chance was nothing but one of the way to give message to Marx. Marx was highly determinist. Who has control over means of production holds power. Determinist philosophy. जिसके पास भी ओनरशिप है वो पावरफुल है. मैक्स वेबर बोलता है ऐसा नहीं होता है. ऐसा नहीं होता है क्योंकि पावर सिर्फ फैक्ट्री और जमीन के ओनर बनने से नहीं आती है. पावर एक टीचर के पास भी हो सकती है, स्टूडेंट के ऊपर, एक स्टूडेंट के पास हो सकती है दूसरे स्टूडेंट्स के ऊपर. पावर कैन बी पोजेस्ड बाय एनीवन. विद इन फैमिली वी हैव फादर एक्सरसाइजिंग पावर. विद इन क्लासरूम टीचर एक्सरसाइजिंग पावर. मॉनिटर one of the student exercising power. Female monitor exercising power. And they are not owners of the means of production, but that is also power. So you can't simply say and present a nonsense and random picture of society that corporate class is the powerful. अरे क्या भाई, क्या मजाक चला रखा है तुमने? ये बोल रहे हो मैक्स वेबर, कार्ल मार्क्स को, क्या मजाक चल रखा है? कब तक चलेगा ये? बात सीधी सी है बड़ी. जब तुम ऑटो करते हो, रिक्शा करते हो, तुम पावरफुल हो जाते हो. बोलेगा 40 नहीं 30, ठीक है नहीं जा रहा भाई. फिर एक्टिंग करते हो जाने की, उधर से पीछे से वो तुम्हें पता है वो आएगा ही क्योंकि चलो चलो बैठ जाओ, हाँ ठीक है. अब क्या मैं ओनर हूं क्या मीन्स ऑफ प्रोडक्शन का? बात सीधी सी है भाई, मैं एक आम आदमी हूं. पावरफुल तो तब भी पावर एक्सरसाइज कर दी मैं. चांस है ये, चांस. देयर शुड नॉट बी डिटर्मिनिज्म इन सोशल साइंसेस. And Weber was talking about more about individuals. Individuals can also exercise power. It is not just one class exercising power over another class. It can be one individual exercising power in any situation, depending on which kind of authority he or she may be. Okay. Now, when you exercise power against resistance, exercise of power against resistance, that somehow portrays a very different picture. Just like a picture that would be portrayed by Marxist or Marxian depiction on power. That would be something like this seesaw model. You are here, someone else is there. Exercising power against resistance of others, that means you have actually been more important in that situation, action situation. Okay, that is why he is obeying you. Being subservient to your command, your authority. Whether traditional, charismatic, legal, rational, the other person is willfully obeying the command. And therefore, his gain is his loss. and therefore power is constant sum. Understood? Next, what do we have to do? We have to talk about authority. You know this. तुम्हें पता है. I don't need to explain authority now. You know this. I don't need to teach you forms of authority. You know that. खत्म Max Weber. Now, next theory. नियो मार्क्सिस्ट भी कर लेते हैं. नियो मार्क्सिस्ट बता देता हूं मैं. नियो मार्क्सिस्ट. We will talk about two people here. Louis Althusser, Antonio Gramsci. Louis Althusser and Antonio Gramsci. Let us see what they have to say on power. First, Althusser. When we look at the writings of Marx, we see a model of society having economic base and other forms of consciousness at the superstructure. Okay. Althusser says that the forms of consciousness, that is the superstructure, is relatively autonomous to the economic base. Superstructure or forms of consciousness is relatively autonomous to the economic base. Economic base. What is the meaning of this line? What is the meaning of this line? It simply means you can be powerful despite you not having any control over means of production. Then what could be the criteria for being powerful? You are powerful because you are not owner of means of production. Rather, you are powerful because you control superstructure. Marx would say, who owns and controls means of production, that is economic base, is powerful. Neo-Marxists will say, whoever controls superstructure is powerful. And the people who control superstructure are not the ones who are controlling economic base, because superstructure is relatively autonomous to the economic base. That means the people who are controlling superstructure may not be necessarily the people who are the owner of means of production. That may as well be a separate class altogether. यहां तक समझ आया कि नहीं आया? Okay, now see. What we have to remember? What we have to remember is simply that according to Marx, who is the powerful? The owner of economic base is powerful. According to Althusser, who is powerful? The one who controls superstructure is powerful. But the one who controls superstructure, according to Marx, is the same person who controls economic base. क्या बेवकूफ आदमी अल्थूजर? बट अल्थूजर बोल रहा है ऐसा नहीं होता है. The one who controls superstructure are not necessarily the similar people who are owner of the economic base. Therefore, I am writing explicitly in my book Ideology and Ideological Apparatus, which I'll explain you, that economy is relatively autonomous from the other system. Okay, now see. Althusser talks about two forms of apparatus. One is ideological state apparatus. Second is repressive state apparatus. Two forms of apparatus. Apparatus. Apparatus means tools. Apparatus. Tools. There are two kinds of tools. One is ideological tool. Second is repressive tool. Okay, I'll explain the meaning of these things. Okay, but just remember for the time being, there are two types of apparatus in society. One is ideological, second is repressive. Now, what is the meaning of these things? First, I'll explain ideological apparatus. Ideological state apparatus. Ideological state apparatus simply means that state is having control over ideology in society. Which ideology? What are those ideologies? Now see. Religion, family, law, education, and media. These are forms of consciousness, right? And these are ideologies. Forms of consciousness means what? Ideologies. Ideology. Nation is what? Nation is form of consciousness. An ideology. Gandhism, Marxism. These are ideologies, forms of consciousness. Family, ideology, form of consciousness. These are ideologies. And these are also apparatus of state. Apparatus of the state. What does it mean? State controls them. See, state controls family. Right or wrong? You tell me. अरे दो से ज्यादा बच्चे कर नहीं पाओगे तुम बिना स्टेट के. फैमिली क्या है? फैमिली भूखी मर जाएगी अगर स्टेट ने एड और असिस्टेंस नहीं दी. The policies that are made by state would not be catering to families if family as a unit is not taken into consideration, first of all, and secondly, it is the state only which controls the population, also instructs the family, also plans for family. It is not the family which is planning for itself. It is the state which is planning for the families. Therefore, family planning done by the state. State provide ration card to the families. State provide IDs, ID card to the families. Otherwise families are identityless. आइडेंटिटी हमें स्टेट देता है, खाना हमें वो दे रहा है, हम क्या है, कुछ भी नहीं। कंट्रोल वो कर रहा है हमें, कॉन्ट्रासेप्टिव भी दे रहा है वो हमको, सब कुछ वही कर रहा है। स्टेट कंट्रोल फैमिली, स्टेट कंट्रोल्स लॉ, स्टेट कंट्रोल्स लॉ, स्टेट कंट्रोल्स रिलीजन, state controls religion. What does it mean? It means state and religion are not separate. Religion and state are friends to each other. Friends. Okay. It's more like friends with benefits. That kind of relation that state has with religion. Friends with benefits. Mutual needs accomplished of both. State controls education. See, you must have heard about these schools. Shishu Saraswati Mandir, SSM. Shishu Saraswati Mandir, SSM. I'm forgetting the name of that school, which is run by RSS. Something like that only. Saraswati Shishu Mandir, ha. Saraswati Shishu Mandir, yes. Now, Saraswati Shishu Mandir, Vidya Mandir, the first ever Shishu Mandir was established in 1952 in Gorakhpur. Okay. And from there on, lakhs of Shishu Mandir are there now in India. Lakhs. And the kind of text, although some of them are affiliated to CBSE, but many of them are still not, and there are many centers as well of those schools in which CBSE curriculum is not followed. Many times you might have read about how the syllabus of history, the syllabus of different topics are changed. What we also call as saffronization of education. Imagine, instead of reading Mahatma Gandhi as father of nation, if since childhood, if you start reading Veer Savarkar or Golwalkar as father of nation, what will happen? You will become Savarkarite or Golwalkarite. Okay. And for you, it would be very common sense to believe in the ideologies of those people. So, when that is the only reason why state controls education, because when you control education, when you have education in your hand, you have future generation in your hand, not just present. Present के लिए तो आप laws बदल सकते हो या फिर कुछ कर लोगे, लेकिन education को अगर बदल लिया, if you have education in your hand, you have future in your hand, because the future, you are preparing the future, the obedient people who are going to subscribe to the ideology that you have full faith in, and you are indoctrinating those people into believing in that ideology as much as you do. In 2017, there was a case by NCRT against Shishu Mandir. Okay. Because what happens is that the kind of things that were being taught in the name of curriculum are somewhat those things which are against the plural and democratic fabric of India. Plural, democratic and secular fabric of India. Imagine if you study Muslims as invaders every time. Every time if you study Muslims as invaders and Muslims as aliens to our Hindu civilization, when you grow up, it will be common sense for you to subscribe to the people who talk on these lines, and you will be readily giving your vote to those people. And you would not be thinking of it as communal or hate speech. For you, it would be simply the right belief. Yes, Muslims have been alien always. There is one man, Veer Savarkar. Savarkar says, all the people, Sikh, Hindus, Buddhist, Jains, all these people are Hindus. Why? Sikh, Sikh तो हिंदूज है ही, हिंदूज तो हिंदू है ही, बुद्धिस्ट और जैन भी हिंदू हैं. Why? Because their sacred place is in the confines of Indian territory. But the sacred place of Muslims is in Makkah, Middle East. And that is why, since the sacred shrine or the sacred place of Muslims do not lie within the confines of Indian territory, therefore they are not Hindus. And when he says they are not Hindus, it also means they are not part of Indian territory. Because to him, Hindu means not just a political or a religious identity. Hindu is about culture. Culture. You are part of a culture and you are not part of that culture. Okay, and that culture also has territory. That culture also has symbols, which some people do not share. The people who share those symbols are very much part of Hindu civilization. Others are not. So when you constantly read these kind of things through education, you automatically become indoctrinated. And state, and we also call it communalization of education. This is also known as communalization of education, because through education you spread hatred in a very legitimate form without inciting any violence. Here it is no violence that is being incited, only you are being taught few things, and those things are made normal to you because this is what you have been taught since forever now. Okay, so this is what ideological apparatus of the state is. So state controls everything. Media is controlled by state or not? अब तो पूरा डिबेट इसी पे चलता है कि कौन सा मीडिया गोदी है, कौन सा नहीं है. So who are the powerful? Who are the powerful? Acha, what happens? One more thing. If state formulates certain laws, and if you do not obey those laws, state has formulated some laws, state has designed education, state controls media, state controls everything. Okay, if you challenge state by chance as an activist, civil society activist, RTA activist, pressure group activist, if you challenge the state as an activist, what will happen? Either you will be put in jail, or your activities will be surveilled. निगरानी रखी जाएगी या तो अंदर डाल दिया जाएगा. That means if you do not subscribe to these ideologies, then we have one solution for you as well. And that solution is repressive state apparatus, which consists of police, army, and judiciary. According to Althusser, whether it is police, whether it is army, whether it is judiciary, all three are working in favor of state. Right or wrong? All three working in favor of state, according to Althusser. पुलिस विल डू व्हाट स्टेट विल आस्क देम टू डू. ऐसा थोड़ा ना कि पुलिस ऑफिसर अलग ही चलेगा, जो स्टेट ने बोला वही करना पड़ेगा. आर्मी आर्मी विल डू. आर्मी कैन नॉट voluntarily attack Pakistan without consent of president. President is the chief commander, and president being chief commander means parliament. That is the chief commander, because president in himself is not autonomous. Okay, it is the parliament again which is taking control over army. Okay, judiciary. Judiciary is the guardian of constitution. Okay, judiciary is the guardian of constitution, and therefore judiciary will protect the laws formulated by the state, unless those laws are violative of fundamental rights of the citizens. But maximum times, judiciary will be guardian of the laws, the guardian of the constitution. Okay, this is what Althusser says. So ideologies are controlled by state, and whosoever does not obey the ideology, he will have police and army attack on him. Imagine the students in Delhi University or JNU. If they do not obey to the commands of state, if they protest against the state for whatsoever reason that may be, then state would unleash police, army against those people and diffuse the protest and normalize the equilibrium that is essential for the maintenance of system. So law and order has to be maintained by the police officials. Law, you know what is order? Order to Marxist is always about conforming to the will and commands of the state. Order means obey the state. Okay. So this is what Louis Althusser is. See, the NCRTs that we have read in our lives, we know this very well that we have not read whole modern history. I hope you agree on this with me, that we have not really read whole modern history. Many figures important are missing from those pages. We do not know about Subhash Chandra Bose and his contribution. We do not know about contribution of Sardar Patel as much as we know the contribution of Mahatma Gandhi and Nehru. Okay, Motilal Nehru I'm talking about. Okay, so we have Gandhian phase in Indian history, but we do not have Bosian phase. These are some anomalies. We do not have radical phase dedicated exclusive page or chapters in the pages of modern history. Radical is something, when you read radical revolutionary forces in the pages of history, that would always be projected as something that was not wanted or something that is unwanted. When you read Bhagat Singh, you read Bhagat Singh not without ideology of the author who has told you about Bhagat Singh. He will always tell you Bhagat Singh under the topic called as revolutionary force, radical force. This is how you read Bhagat Singh. Okay. And when you start considering Bhagat Singh's contribution as radical, the textbook is giving you one message: don't be like Bhagat. Don't be like Bhagat Singh. And that way, that is how the NCRTs make Gandhi superhero and Bhagat Singh not such a great hero. सुभाष चंद्र बोस तो गायब है, उसकी फ्लाइट पता नहीं कहां चली गई. गायब है, उसका कुछ ज्यादा कंसर्न है भी नहीं। तो गांधी ही लीडर निकलेगा, गांधी ही लीडर निकलेगा। वाई गांधी इज लीडर और फादर? भाई द होल फेज वॉज डोमिनेटेड बाय कांग्रेस। पोस्ट इंडिपेंडेंस history was largely governed by Congress. Okay. And it was the Congress party which designed the curriculum. And it was obvious, if at that point of time, if we had some right winger party or some other religious party or some other nationalist party, Vishwa Hindu Parishad, something like that, or RSS, then the NCRTs would have been very different. Then instead of Gandhi, we would have had Savarkar being as normal as today we consider Gandhi as normal. Okay. So it is, who controls? Who is the powerful? These are the apparatuses through which state controls everything. The form of consciousness. Today, if we consider Gandhi as father of nation, that means state has been successful in exercising its power on us and in perpetuating its ideology upon us. Because through those chapters, we have become the conformists who will always obey and consider Gandhi as the leader and Bhagat Singh revolutionary. So if you try to become like Bhagat Singh, okay, like Bhagat Singh, in case if you try to become, so you will be given the same punishment that was given to Bhagat Singh. सीधी सी बात है, ठीक है? And you know this very well that when you read Louis Althusser, he is simply trying to tell that one or the other way, state is successful in creating conformist citizens. State is very powerful because state controls all the apparatuses, and state will make you what state wants you to be like through these apparatuses. Okay. Therefore, Louis Althusser, although he's a neo Marxist, is not giving agency to individuals in his theory. Therefore, his theory is also known as structural Marxism. Louis Althusser is always talking about state controlling us through apparatuses. That means we do not have our thinking. We are controlled. We are projected as unthinking beings who are simply conformist, manipulated by these apparatuses controlled by state. This is how Althusser is projecting us as. And therefore, Louis Althusser is neo-Marxist definitely, but he is more structural Marxist. I'll explain you these things. Structural Marxist, also known as structural Marxism. Okay. And the other person that I talked about is Antonio Gramsci. Gramsci is a bit different from Althusser. In what way? Gramsci also has given similar theory, if you remember. Gramsci talks about civil society being distinct from political society. Political society commands civil society. Civil society consists of education, religion, all those things. Same again. So, according to him, there are two societies. One is civil, second is political. And civil consists of religion, education, media, and political controls civil. That means political control religion. So then how is Gramsci different from Althusser? Gramsci is different from Althusser because Gramsci is not just talking about how those ideas are becoming common sense to us. just like Althusser said, cultural hegemony. Rather, Gramsci is also talking about counter hegemony. That means he is giving, in his theory, he is also giving power to individuals. He is not displaying individuals as passive recipient or conformist, manipulated by apparatuses controlled by the state. Rather, he is also giving, in his theory, an agency to individuals, that they are charismatic people, they can change the system, they can pose counter hegemony. Okay, yes, yes. So, therefore, he is also talking about counter hegemony. Okay, so just think like this. Think like this. Althusser is like this: state, individual, and state controls individual. Individual is like puppet. Gramsci. State controlling individual. Yes, but then individual is also, individual is also countering state. And if this yellow, that state controlling individual, is cultural hegemony, then this red, that individual countering state, is counter hegemony. And therefore, Gramsci's theory, or Gramsci's version of Marxism, is not called as structural Marxism. It is called as humanist Marxist, or humanist Marxism. Humanist Marxism. Simple. Understood? Humanist. ठीक है, खत्म. ये हो गया न्यू मार्क्सिस्ट. Althusser and Gramsci, why did they write these theories? Do you know this? We should always understand the context in which these theories got developed. Just like we know that Marxism developed in a specific context. Gramsci's theory or Althusser's theory. Althusser is first of all French man. Gramsci is Italian man. And Gramsci developed his theory in response to fascist tendency that were developing in Italy during the regime of Mussolini. So, in response to Mussolini's rule, Gramsci developed this theory to explain to the people how leaders govern the society. In what way leaders control over apparatuses and make those things common sense to us, and we accept it. Okay, we accept it. And Althusser is a Frenchman. And Althusser also developed this theory, structural Marxism, again in response to students' protest happening in France in late 20th century. It was approximately 1950 onwards this theory was developed. The kind of protests that we saw in France. Okay. So every theory is developing in certain context. We should understand those contexts as well. So this was all about Marxist, neo-Marxist. Now we'll start with pluralist theory. So I'll take one break, then I'll continue. बताऊंगा holidays बताऊंगा. Is it the another name? Sir, counter hegemony is also called as humanist. Humanist Marxism उस philosophy का नाम है. Structural Marxism क्या है? जो structures को importance देता है, individuals को count नहीं करता. काउंट नहीं करता इंडिविजुअल्स को, सिंपली बोलता है स्ट्रक्चर्स गवर्निंग इंडिविजुअल्स, स्ट्रक्चर्स रेगुलेट इंडिविजुअल्स. ह्यूमनिस्ट मार्क्सिज्म इज गिविंग एजेंसी टू इंडिविजुअल्स एज वेल. काउंटर हेजेमनी is coming from individuals against the structures only, and that is represented by Gramsci. If you remember dual character, dual nature, okay, he told us about dual nature of religion, dual nature of every structure we have. If structures are used to control individuals, individuals will use the same structure to counter the state. That is why humanism. How long will be holidays? 10 दिन का तो मान ही लो. ठीक है. Okay. Let us begin with first audio check. Audible? Let us begin with pluralist theory. Now see, pluralist theory of power is given by multiple people, okay? But for UPSC, for our concern, we will limit ourselves to the important scholar, okay? Not talk about multiple because we are not here to become scholars. हमारा objective एकदम clear है. So we will limit ourselves to the discussion of important man, that is Robert Dahl. Robert Dahl. And also I will talk about one more man, David Marsh. These are the two people we will limit ourselves to. Robert Dahl and David Marsh. Now, what is pluralist theory of power? Dahl, D-A-H-L. See, this theory developed in response to and as a critique to functionalist theory of power given by Talcott Parsons. Robert Dahl is American. Talcott Parsons was also American. Dahl has developed this theory as a critique to Parsonian theory of power. Okay, critique to Parsonian notion of power. Now we know one thing. Robert Dahl has developed his theory in response to and as a critique to functionalist theory of power. So of course we need to revise what was the functionalist theory of power telling us, which was critiqued by Robert Dahl. Functionalist theory of power told us that power is a resource used for realization of collective goals. भाई पावर एक रिसोर्स है जिसको यूज किया जाता है कलेक्टिव गोल्स को फुलफिल करने में. This is what Talcott Parsons told us. Power is a resource which is used to fulfill collective goals. That means state will formulate policies to fulfill collective goals of society. Whether it is right to education, it is done to fulfill collective goal of Indian society. What is collective goal? Collective goal is to produce students who because of their social location could not get education, to produce students who are educated and who are given compulsory free education by the state. So therefore the collective goal of society is fulfilled because illiteracy and lack of access to education is eliminated, and therefore Indian society would be coming out as literate and high in education indices. So collective goal of society was fulfilled by the power used to formulate policies like right to education. Robert Dahl says there is nothing like collective goal. There is nothing like societal goal. And also, we cannot say that everybody wins or everybody loses. Why he is saying this? If I ask you a very simple question, suppose I asked one question to Talcott Parson, who is powerful in society? This is one question that I asked to Talcott Parson. Who is powerful in society? Talcott Parson would have simply told me, it is the system which has power, and it is the system which do not have power. How system has power? We have given our power to leaders who are formulating policies for the benefit of system as a whole. It is the system which has power, and it is a system which do not have power. So system, system, system. If I ask the same question, who is powerful, to Robert Dahl, Robert Dahl would have told me it is not the system which is powerful, rather it is certain interest groups in society, pressure groups or interest groups in society which are powerful. It is not the system as a whole. There is nothing like system as a whole. This is a very abstract notion. You cannot really see system. You can't really evaluate whether systemic power is increasing or systemic power is decreasing. You cannot really empirically evaluate these things. It is actually certain interest groups which are powerful. Okay, this is what we have to remember. So Robert Dahl has actually written one book. The name of the book was book written by Robert Dahl. The name of the book was Who Governs? Who governs was the main question that Robert Dahl had in his mind. Who governs the society? Very basic question. Who governs the society? Marx, you know what he would have said. Who governs society? Talcott Parson, you know. Max Weber, you know. Althusser, you know. Gramsci also, you know. Robert Dahl, what does he say? He says that society consists of multiple interest groups remember this word, interest groups. Does anyone know what is interest group? Any knowledge on interest group? Ever read interest group? Associam, Vicky. Yes. Acha, if I ask you simple question. Today we have BJP in power at the national level. Is Congress interest group? Remember, opposition parties are also interest groups. Opposition parties are also interest groups. Okay. The question is, what is interest group? Think about, for example, let me talk about Delhi University. Delhi University has multiple interest groups. We have student union in Delhi University. Student union. We have Delhi University Teachers Association, DUTA, DUTA. These are interest groups. Similarly, in JNU, we have Student Union and Teachers Association. When you will join as an IAS officer in bureaucracy, you will have IAS Officers Association. You will become a member of that National IAS Officers Association. Okay. By the virtue of being an IAS officer, you would be a member of that association. And if by chance state would come up with any sort of policy that may weaken the power of IAS officers, for example, lateral entry. Lateral entry. When state would formulate policies for the lateral entry of the corporates into bureaucracy, you as IAS officer association's member would challenge the state because your interests are being harmed. You would come up as an interest group and you would challenge the state. Okay. And then there would be another interest group which would be challenging IAS Officers Association as to why they are challenging the state. They are making bureaucracy open system. They are making bureaucracy more democratic. Bureaucracy is not democratic and bureaucracy lacks specialists. So if government is letting specialists in, what is the problem that you have? The specialists are coming in for the benefit of system as a whole. Helcut person. You as an IAS Officer Association would not subscribe to this subscribe to this argument that they are coming in to benefit society as a whole, because you have petitioned to the state that in the 4-5 years of tenure that you are hiring them for, how would they benefit the society as a whole? Rather, that would disrupt the whole chain of command. The person who was supposed to get promotion, instead of that person, you have now hired an outsider, outsourced that position to a corporate person. You are actually demotivating the bureaucrats. Why would they be efficient if they know that on that position, the promotion that they are waiting for would be given to an outsider? So bureaucracy would now be inefficient. So you would see before state multiple conflicting interests. one interest group representing corporates, one interest group representing bureaucrats, one interest group simply coming out in favor of opening the bureaucracy to the outer world. Okay, so there are multiple stakeholders. Second situation, you have elections coming in the next 2 months. Within 2 months, you have election. Okay, farmers are running in debt because of bad harvest or bad monsoon led to bad harvest. It has led to rise of debt, and since they are in debt, they are not in a position to repay the loan to the banks from which they borrowed this money. Now we have two conflicting situations once again. Banks are running in NPAs. NPAs are piling up like anything, non-profit asset, non-performing asset. And on the other hand, we have farmers who are in debt. Who will state support? Who will state support? If farmers are supported by the state, banks will go down further. Their NPAs would accumulate more and more because government would be helping the farmers only by taking loan again from RBI or central bank. And banks, if their interests are ignored, the economic efficiency or the productivity of the society as a whole will go down. There would be no infrastructure, loan, assistance, aid. There would no more schools being established in the name of state. State would not be able to fulfill most of the promises that it might have given to the people in its election manifesto last time. But state also has before it elections next coming in, and to gain power they need to have vote, and farmers are bigger vote than corporates. At times what happens in society, multiple interest groups we have, and each interest group makes conflicting demand on the state. This group demands A and this group has demand minus A, exact opposite of this. Understood or not? ठीक है, ठीक. Now, so what we have to remember? First point we have to remember is society consists of multiple interest groups. Second point, what we have to remember is that each interest group is equally influential. Equally, remember, equally influential. Equally influential. Okay. And when interest groups are equally influential, that means power is dispersed amongst interest groups. Okay, power is not in a system as a whole. There is nothing like system. It's very abstract notion, system. What is system? Power is dispersed amongst interest groups. Dispersed among interest groups. And what will happen then? If interest groups are equally influential, suppose we have one farmer union, Bharat Kisan Union, BKU, on the one hand. On the other hand, we have FICCI or ASSOCHAM. These two are interest groups, Bharat Kisan Union or Kisan Mazdoor Sangathan or any National Farmer Association. This is one interest group. Second interest group is that of corporate lobby or banks, National Bank Association, something like that, or ASSOCHAM, some other. And the demands of the two groups at times is conflicting. What it demands is going to hamper this. What this demands is going to have consequence on this. And state is in the middle. State will listen to whom? This is the problem. So you cannot say, Talcott Parson, that power is a resource. बड़े प्यार से आप बोल के निकल गए, power is a resource used for the collective realization of the goals, as if there is nothing conflicting, सब कुछ beautifully चल रहा है, बीच में कोई झगड़ा था ही नहीं किसी का. Okay. Power dispersed among interest groups. And next last point, state would take into consideration demand of which interest group? State would take into consideration demand of that interest group whose demand is beneficial for the society as a whole. ये भी आ गया वहीं पर. Okay. State would take into consideration demand of that group which is beneficial for society as a whole. Society as a whole. He is although a pluralist and he recognizes, yes, there are multiple power centers. There is no one power center, there are multiple power centers, multiple pressure groups or interest groups. Okay, opposition parties also form interest groups. Suppose you have any sort of policy, for example, you invite FDI in defense. Let us assume you invite FDI in defense, 100% FDI in defense. Okay, you keep the defense open, completely open, 100% open to FDI. Now, again, we have multiple parties at stake here. Okay, stakeholders, what we also call as stakeholders. Okay, one is indigenous defense production units, DRDO. Okay, and we also have foreign defense production corporates. Thirdly, we also have some civil rights activists who are concerned about unemployment of those people, because they believe somehow that if we privatize, then the people who were till now secured in government corporation would no longer be secured. Their jobs would be unstable. The more you privatize, the more it is threat to national sovereignty, something like that. Okay, so you would have multiple kind of interest groups developing in response to any policy. The question is, whose interest would the state take into consideration? Robert Dahl believed that state takes into consideration interest of everyone. It would also take into consideration interest of domestic people. Also take into consideration interest of foreign players, also take into consideration interest of civil rights activists, and therefore this is the only reason why any policy before it becomes act is open, publicly open and uploaded for feedback by the stakeholders. This is the only reason why any bill before it becomes act is made available in public forum for discussion. Every day you will see people writing on that bill in Hindu or Indian Express. Until that bill becomes act, everybody would be giving their opinions on it. And therefore state would be taking the best of all those opinions and would take into consideration interest of everyone. Understood? Therefore, taking interest of society as a whole. Okay, this is what Robert Dahl believed. Okay, chalo, khatam. Now we will talk about David Marsh. The name of his theory is, although he falls under the same branch, pluralist theory, but his theory is uniquely called as elite pluralism. Elite pluralism. The question is, what is elite pluralism? David Marsh, remember, if Robert Dahl critiqued Talcott Parson, David Marsh has critiqued Robert Dahl. सोशियोलॉजी में यही चलता है बस, एक ने बोला दूसरे ने उसकी बेइज्जती करी, तीसरा है उसने इसकी बेइज्जती करी, ऐसे कर करके डिफरेंट पर्सपेक्टिव्स पता चले और वो सब सोशियोलॉजी का पार्ट बन गए. ठीक है. Elite pluralism is a critique to Robert Dahl's classical pluralism. Critique to Robert Dahl's classical pluralism. His pluralism is known as classical, Dahl's, because classical in the sense it was the first kind of theory that was given by any person. Okay. What does David Marsh say? Marsh is saying that yes, I agree with Robert Dahl that there are multiple interest groups. I agree. I agree that when a state would formulate policy, multiple stakeholders would have one or the other stake in that policy. I agree. I also agree that that power is dispersed among interest groups. It is not in the system as a whole. And I agree that yes, pressure groups exert power on state, and state then would come up with policies. So state does not automatically come up with policy. Every time do you know this, that every policy that state formulates is actually the result of demand of the people. And when I say demand of the people, I'm specifically talking about demand of the interest groups. Remember this, interest groups. I am not powerful. You are not powerful. He is not powerful. He is not powerful. Who is powerful? Associations are powerful. I as an individual hold no power. You as an individual do not hold power. Associations hold power. Okay. Now what is David Marsh is saying? David Marsh says, yes, I agree there are multiple interest groups, but I do not agree with Robert Dahl that all the interest groups exert equal power and they are equally influential. The fact is that some interest groups are more influential, more powerful than other interest groups. Some interest groups are more powerful and more influential than other interest groups, thereby rejecting the notion given by Robert Dahl that all the interest groups are equally powerful, equally influential on the. ऐसा होता नहीं है. This does not happen in reality. Some will be more powerful. See how. Let me give you example of just to give you any example. किसी भी example की हम बात कर सकते हैं यहाँ पे आपको पता चल जाएगा कि मैं क्या बोल रहा हूँ. Let us talk about Citizenship Amendment Act. Okay. Yes, this is a fact that most of the problems that India deal with, one of that problem is refugee crisis. Okay, one of the problems that India deals with is refugee crisis, and it is a bigger problem for India, specifically when India is not a signatory member to United Nations Refugee Commission, Human Refugee Commission. India is not a signatory member to that. India has not really ratified membership to that commission. And therefore, when it comes to refugee crisis situation, India is always in problem. And therefore, to clear the boundaries and to understand and to make it very clear that who should be citizen, who should not be the citizens, in order to help India overcome this crisis, India came up with this Citizenship Amendment Act. No other intention. The larger ambition, the larger aim was to first grant citizenship to the people who are Indians and who could not get Indian citizenship, and also help thereby to alleviate itself of the refugee crisis. Okay. But who would be given citizenship is decided by few people who formulate policies. Why some countries were excluded, some countries were given importance in that bill. That is not decided equally by everyone. You do not have pressure groups equally deciding these things for such kind of things. Some pressure groups dominate over other ones. So basically, if I were to use David Marsh, I would have said that RSS or any other Hindu right-wing pressure group. Okay, you don't have to write this in your paper, by the way, but I'm just telling you for an example. Okay, because I have chosen this example only, which is controversial in itself. Chose this example because I know that this is very familiar to you, I hope. So RSS was more influential in putting that pressure on the state as to decide which person should be coming from which country should be given citizenship, which country should be included and which should be excluded. And then we also had anti-Citizenship Amendment Act protests conducted by, rallied over by many minorities and some majority people as well representing the minorities in Delhi, at India Gate, at many other places. People were Hindus still fighting for minorities. So you had multiple stakeholders, but who won? Those people who were more influential than you people, they won. Understood or not? Take into consideration the minimum support price wala case, farmers protest. Who won in that protest? Is it the farmers Who won the protest? Is it the Association of Farmers? No. Is it our our voice on social media that won? Of the associations that we form on social media, collectively considering ourselves as pressure group on social media? No. Only those people won who were more influential than all of us combined together. I'm not pointing to any one specific person or organization, but yes, few people won, maximum could not win. And this is what happens in reality. And then Robert Dahl says every decision is taking into consideration interest of everyone. David Marsh is saying interest of everyone is not taken into consideration. Interest of few elites are taken into consideration and the rest are rejected. So what will we say? All interest groups are not equal. Some interest groups are more influential and powerful than others. Some interest groups are more influential and powerful than others. And who are these? Some interest groups. These are the elite interest groups. Elite pressure groups. Why they are elite pressure groups or interest groups? Because elite interest groups have wealth, influential leaders, and educated middle class, or and educated or highly educated, I would say, more educated than the normal interest groups or pressure groups. Highly educated, urban, middle class. In case of India, instead of educated urban middle class, you may even talk about educated rural upper caste or urban upper caste men. Okay, upper caste, Hindu upper caste men. Hindu upper caste men. Okay, these are the elite interest groups. Okay, and therefore, David Marsh says that government does not take into consideration interest of everyone, and government is not honest broker. Rather, government and governance is nothing but business of compromise. There is one line given by Raymond Aron. He says governance is business of compromise. Compromise how? And you will write this in elite pluralism only. Governance is business of compromise. Why? Because interest of few powerful are given more importance than interest of few which are not so powerful in comparison to these. You talk about any decision that is taken into consideration or the effect to that policy is given due importance only after being influenced by some of the most dominant elite pressure groups which are operating the society. It is not every pressure group that is equally powerful. Some elite pressure groups are more powerful. This is the main crux of David Marsh theory. Okay, understood? So far, what we have studied, who is powerful or where is power in society. Okay, so Talcott Parsons telling me about power of system. Marx, power in the hands of capitalist class. Weber, power in the hands of authority. And authority is of multiple types: traditional, charismatic, legal, rational. Pluralist, power in the hands of interest groups. Elite pluralist, power in the hands of elite interest groups. Simple. Clear? Okay. So rest we will discuss tomorrow. And when you look at these theories, see, all the theories are equally right. We cannot say one is right, one is wrong, one is right. Every theory is applicable in context. No theory is universal. Remember this. Every theory is applicable in a context. No theory is universal because those theories got developed in a context only. Okay. Marx, these are the grand theories, Marx and functionalist. These are grand theories. And grand theories, although they claim themselves to be universal, but we know very well that nothing is universal. Okay. Marxism has failed, functionalism has also collapsed, which is something that I will explain. Okay, once we are done with this chapter. So, yes, what we are left with is, yes, now. This is very important theory, elite theory. Elite theory I have not taught you yet. What I have taught you is elite pluralist. That is different. That falls under here, elite pluralism. And here we have another theory, elite theory, which is very different. And then we have feminist theory, equally important, and postmodern theory is equally important. All the theories are important. Any doubt? Sir, give examples how economic base cannot be always powerful according to Louis Althusser. कोई भी सिंपल सा एग्जांपल अगर तुम उठाओ जिसमें किसी भी कॉर्पोरेट का कोई रोल है ही नहीं, किसी कॉर्पोरेट का कोई रोल नहीं है। अभी सिटीजनशिप अमेंडमेंट एक्ट में कॉर्पोरेट का रोल क्या है बताओ? इसमें कैपिटलिस्ट क्लास थोड़ा ना इन्फ्लुएंस कर रही है। समझ सकते हो कि नहीं? मतलब सीधी सी बात है। न्यू एजुकेशन पॉलिसी आ रही है, इसमें इसमें कॉर्पोरेट का क्या है इतना? ऐसा तो है नहीं कि न्यू एजुकेशन पॉलिसी ने प्राइवेट एजुकेशन को बहुत ज्यादा कुछ फिलिप दे दी है, एनकरेज कर दिया प्राइवेट एजुकेशन को, एफडीआई को इनवाइट कर दिया है, ऐसा भी नहीं है। तो टू से एवरी टाइम दैट यू नो it is the capitalist class which is powerful and governing the society and influencing the politics would be wrong. And remember those kind of theories what Marx talks about, these are the theories which describe capitalist societies. And today we are living in 2021. No society is purely capitalist. For that matter, no society is purely socialist. Today we have welfare capitalism, welfare state, socialist patterns of society. So to say till date that yes, it is capitalist class only whose interests are being served true policies would be abstract. Sir, how Partha Chatterjee, when talks about extraordinary interference by state in Hinduism, is different to Amartya Sen when he talks about symmetric. अरे आदर्श गुप्ता, तुम ये इन 4 स्कॉलर्स के पीछे क्यों पड़ गए हो? मेरे को याद है 5 क्वेश्चन तुमने पूछे हैं सेक्युलरिज्म में, 5, और पांचों तुमने इन्हीं के ऊपर पूछे हैं, और ये क्वेश्चन दूसरी बार पूछ रहे हो तुम दूसरी लैंग्वेज में। मैं बताता हूं फिर भी। अमर्त्य सेन सिमेट्रिकल ट्रीटमेंट की बात कर रहा है। सिमेट्रिकल ट्रीटमेंट, सिमेट्रिकल ट्रीटमेंट का मतलब है कि चाहे आप हिंदू हो, मुस्लिम हो, बुद्धिस्ट हो, सिख हो, मैं आपको एज अ स्टेट इक्वली ट्रीट करूंगा। इसका मतलब आर्मी में अगर आप हो, आपको मैं दाढ़ी बढ़ाने के लिए अलाउ करूंगा, आपको मैं मुंडन करना भी अलाउ करूंगा आर्मी में, तिलक लगा के, ब्राह्मण्स की जो प्रैक्टिस होती है मुंडन, ठीक है, क्लीन हेड। मुस्लिम्स की जो प्रैक्टिस है लॉन्ग बियर्ड की, वो भी अलाउ करूंगा। ये होता है सिमेट्रिकल ट्रीटमेंट। ये कैसे वर्क करेगा, किस फॉर्म में वर्क करेगा? बिकॉज व्हेन अमर्त्य सेन टॉक्स अबाउट सिमेट्रिकल ट्रीटमेंट और सिमेट्री ऑफ ट्रीटमेंट, both are one and the same. He himself has not given so much of details on those things, but he has given one principle that when state treats everyone symmetrically, that is what the true essence of secularism would be. Okay, now symmetrically would imply many forms. One form is idea of one group imposed on others as well, that is also symmetrical. So for example, if I am theocratic state like Saudi Arab, a theocratic state, so the practice of one religious group is imposed on other religious groups, that is also symmetrical. But then, although it seems symmetrical, but then it may also be seen as violative of fundamental rights of human, okay, universal rights of human, but then it is symmetrical. Symmetrical also has one more form which I just told you, that in the army we have different groups, all the groups allowed to practice their everyday life properly in accordance with their religious norms. That is also symmetrical treatment. What is the kind of symmetrical treatment that Amartya Sen wants us to understand is not something that is very clear. Amartya Sen has not cleared these things, okay, but he has been very clear on the symmetry of treatment. There is one EPW article as well on this issue, okay, but there also it is very much mentioned that Amartya Sen did not clearly point this out, okay. Secondly, Partha Chatterjee, when he talks about extraordinary interference by the state in Hinduism, extraordinary interference by state is different, symmetrical treatment is different. Yes, it may happen that symmetrical treatment may seem interference to other minorities. In a theocratic state, if I am imposing Muslim codes and conventions, if I assume that this is the Muslim ruled or state governed by Shariat laws or inscriptions of Quran, and if I impose those norms to all the minorities including Sikh and Hindus, that at the surface in the language of Sen may look symmetrical treatment, but to some other people like Partha Chatterjee, it may look as extraordinary interference. So the idea is same, but the interpretations would always vary. Understood? Any other doubt? Okay, so I'll meet you tomorrow. Bye bye.